For your practice, we're going to take a look at a mentor text, a mentor example of a research plan that proposes a solution. And we are doing this to identify the structure and components to help you plan out the parts of your proposal. So when we think of a mentor text, you can think of a person who is a mentor, right? Someone that you look up to, you get advice from, they model what kind of person you should be, or it's like a mentor in a sports capacity. Maybe they're a really good player. So, a mentor text we're using as a good model of the writing that we can do. So, the directions as you are reading this mentor text are to annotate the research report and notice choices the writers make in structuring their text, the parts that make up the text, and any persuasive techniques the writers use. So, we're going to be looking at how the authors structure their text, what order it goes in, what those four parts are. We're going to identify the four parts, the components of a research report. And then we're going to look at persuasive techniques that the writers use. So, specific choices the writers use to persuade their audience. This mentor text is an excerpt from a paper called Single Use Plastics, a Roadmap for Sustainability. And this was written by the United Nations Environment Program. These are people specifically in England, question mark. And that's why some of the spelling is going to be a little different. So here we will begin. The subheading is Executive Summary. Plastic is a material that is cheap, light, and easy to make. However, we are using too much plastic and not handling the waste properly. This is causing harm to the environment. Governments, businesses, and individuals all have a role to play in reducing the use of single-use plastics. So as we are reading, we're going to annotate. This first part is the hook. So it's not a super engaging hook. It's not using one of those examples that I talked about in the instruction video, but it provides some context, gives some background information about the topic, and engages the reader so that they know what the topic is of the paper and what role they can play in the solution, or in what role they play in the problem, so that it's relevant to them. Let's continue reading. This header is The Age of Plastic, Why We Need to Change. Since the 1950s, more plastic has been made than any other material. A lot of this plastic is thrown away after being used just once. In fact, half of all the waste in the world is made up of this kind of plastic. And we have a little number 1 here. This is called a footnote. So we're going to look at the bottom of the document, and this is telling us where this information comes from. So this is how the writers are citing their sources. This comes from the State of Hawaii Senate Bill 522 that was published in or put into place in 2019. Continue here. Most of this waste comes from Asia, but countries like America, Japan, and the European Union produce the most plastic packaging waste per person. So we see another footnote here to tell us where the writers are getting this information from. We are struggling to deal with all the plastic waste we have now. Only 9% of all the plastic ever made has been recycled. The rest ends up in landfills or in the environment. If we continue using plastic like we are now, by 2050, there will be 12 billion tons of plastic litter in landfills and the environment. The plastic industry might also use up 20% of the world's oil by then. Plastic doesn't break down easily. Instead, it breaks into tiny pieces called microplastics. Plastic bags and styrofoam containers can take thousands of years to break down, which harms the soil and water. When plastic waste gets into the environment, it causes many problems. Plastic bags can block waterways and make natural disasters worse. They can also clog up sewers and create places for mosquitoes and pests to live, spreading diseases like malaria. Animals like turtles and dolphins eat plastic bags because they mistake them for food. The chemicals in plastic can even get into our food and make us sick. Styrofoam containers are also harmful because they contain chemicals that can hurt our bodies if we eat or drink from them. Burning plastic waste for heat or cooking releases harmful gases into the air. Plastic waste is not only Plastic waste is not only harmful to the environment and our health, but it also costs a lot of money. Cleaning up plastic litter on beaches and in the ocean costs billions of dollars every year. Plastic waste causes at least $13 billion of damage to the world's oceans annually. It is clear that we need to take action to address the plastic waste problem. So this here is the relevance. So the writers are discussing facts and statistics that share what a problem this is, the vastness of the problem, who is included, what the impact of this problem is, and what is going to happen if there isn't a solution, what's going to happen in the future. So all of this right here is the relevance. So that extends from this header here, the age of plastic, why we need to change, all the way down to here. Then we move on to this subheading, key findings and recommendations. Governments can help by improving waste management and creating incentives for people to change their habits. They should also establish strong rules for designing and making plastics. Research on alternative materials should be conducted and people should be educated about the problem. It is important to involve different groups when making decisions to solve the plastic crisis. So here we have a solution. The writer is presenting different ways that the problem can be solved. And then we continue here. Some countries have already started banning or charging for single use plastics, but more needs to be done. Enforcement of these bans and the availability of affordable alternatives are key challenges. Instead of just banning things, agreements between the government and private businesses can be made to find better options that are good for the environment and not too expensive. So here, this sentence here is a counterclaim. So the writer is saying, here's what some people are doing, but it's not enough. More needs to be done. Enforcement of these bans and the availability of affordable alternatives are key challenges. So this here is a common ground. They're saying here's something that's getting in the way of doing more. Let's make this green. I guess I have to change color this way. And then we're going to label this as a concession. This is where the writer is kind of making common ground between him or herself and then the opposing viewpoint and the counterclaim. And then last, we have, instead of just banning things like single-use plastics, agreements between the government and private businesses can be made to find better options that are good for the environment and not too expensive. So that's where the writer is saying, here is what we should do instead. And this is the refutation. The United Nations Environment Program has come up with a plan to help governments take action against single-use plastics. This plan includes steps such as identifying the most problematic single-use plastics, considering the best ways to solve the problem, and involving important groups in decision-making. Public awareness about the harm caused by single-use plastics is crucial, as well as providing rewards and support for businesses to change. In conclusion, plastic waste is a serious problem that affects the environment, our health, and the economy. We need to reduce the use of single-use plastics and improve waste management. Governments, businesses, and individuals all have a role to play in finding solutions and taking action. By working together, we can protect the environment and create a healthier future for everyone. So this last part here is the call to action. Here is what the writer wants the audience to do. All right, let's talk a little bit about some persuasive choices that this writer makes. So first, the writer is relying on logic and facts, as well as appealing to the emotions of the audience. So they start by identifying how long this has been an issue, how much of the waste in the world is made up of plastic, and who is affected. So that is using logic. And it's also appealing to the credibility of the writer because we're able to fact check and is showing that this person knows what they're talking about. We also see an appeal to emotion here. By 2050, there will be 12 billion tons of plastic litter in landfills and the environment. And the plastic industry might also use up 20% of the world's oil by then. So the writer is using facts and logic here, but it's also working to appeal to the emotions of the audience because they should be surprised by this and kind of worried about what this might look like in the future. We also see logic and emotion playing together in this paragraph. Plastic doesn't break down easily. Instead, it breaks into tiny pieces called microplastics. Plastic bags and styrofoam containers can take thousands of years to break down, which harms the soil and water. So we have facts here about microplastics and styrofoam, and then it's also should be worrying that it takes thousands of years to break down and how that harms soil and water. Again, we're looking at the effects of this problem. So, plastic bags can block waterways and make natural disasters worse. They can also clog up sewers and create places for mosquitoes and pests to live, spreading diseases like malaria. So, nobody wants malaria. This is obviously a serious issue. So, this is again using facts and logic to appeal to the audience's emotion.